Have you ever wondered what goes through a narcissist's mind when they choose to discard someone? It's a thought-provoking question, especially when the victim of this discard is left feeling abandoned, confused, and sometimes even heartbroken. But what about the narcissist? Do they ever regret their decision? Are there moments when they reflect on their actions? Or do they simply move on to their next target? In this article, we'll dive into the psychology of narcissism, exploring the complexities of how and why narcissists may, at times, feel regret after discarding someone. We will also discuss the emotional and mental dynamics that cause such regret to occur, along with why it is often so short-lived. If you've ever been discarded by a narcissist, you won't want to miss this fascinating and insightful discussion. Narcissism is a personality trait that many of us are familiar with, often characterized by an inflated sense of self-importance, a lack of empathy, and a constant craving for admiration. At its core, narcissists thrive on being the center of attention, using manipulation and exploitation to bolster their egos. However, when their need for validation is not met, or when they feel that they are losing control over someone, they tend to discard the person, often without providing any explanation. This leaves the discarded individual confused and hurt, grappling to understand what went wrong. You may wonder, why would a narcissist regret discarding someone? Given that they seem to thrive on emotional detachment and control, it might seem counterintuitive. However, there are moments when a narcissist does feel regret. Typically, a narcissist discards someone when they no longer feel that person is fulfilling their emotional or narcissistic needs. This might happen if the individual stops adoring them the way they once did, or if the narcissist feels their influence over them is weakening. Regret arises when they realize they've lost someone who in some way was useful to them. This regret, however, is not a result of love or empathy. Narcissists generally do not recognize their emotional need for the discarded individual, but they do notice the void that their absence creates. It's a sense of self-interest that triggers their regret, not a deep connection with the person. The narcissist may long for the admiration and attention that the discarded person once provided, but it is driven by their ego rather than any emotional bond. The triggers behind a narcissist's regret are often linked to their emotional insecurities and fears. Narcissists tend to have fragile self-esteem, making them more susceptible to emotional wounds that others may overlook. Initially, they may feel empowered when discarding someone, believing that they are in control. However, when the discarded person moves on and finds happiness without them, it can cause the narcissist to feel insecure. This shift can challenge their sense of worth and make them question their ability to maintain control over others. Furthermore, the narcissist may experience regret when they realize that the discarded individual is no longer available to supply the validation they constantly seek. The attention, admiration, and emotional support that they once received may no longer be within reach. This sense of loss, again rooted in self-interest, triggers feelings of regret and frustration. Narcissists thrive on the adoration and attention of others, and losing a source of validation can feel like a personal failure. Narcissists' regret is complex and rooted in their need for constant reinforcement of their self-image. While they may appear indifferent to the feelings of others, their own emotional insecurities and fears often lead them to regret discarding someone, not out of love, but because they recognize the absence of a source of validation. For those who have been discarded, the narcissist's regret is rarely an apology or an acknowledgement of hurt. It's more of a reflection of their own unmet emotional needs. But here's where things get complicated. Narcissists are not typically capable of true empathy, so their regret is not rooted in genuine concern for the well-being of others. Instead, their regret is primarily a reflection of their own emotional needs. For example, if the discarded individual had been a source of constant validation, their absence can make the narcissist feel empty and powerless. In these moments, the narcissist might attempt to re-establish control, either by trying to hoover the person back into their life, or by convincing themselves that they never really needed that person in the first place. Interestingly, the narcissist's regret often fades quickly. It's replaced by a renewed need to find someone new to feed their ego and maintain their sense of self-worth. The discarded individual is rarely given the opportunity to fully process the narcissist's brief moments of regret, because the narcissist's behavior can be erratic and unpredictable. Sometimes, they may try to come back into the person's life, but this is typically more about regaining control than actually wanting to rebuild the relationship. Narcissists thrive on the cycle of idealization, devaluation, and discard. Once they've discarded someone, their need for power and control becomes their priority again, and regret takes a back seat. The question remains, though, why does the narcissist's regret fade so quickly? One reason lies in the narcissist's self-absorption. Their tendency to focus on their own needs and desires often overshadows any meaningful emotional connection with others. They are so immersed in their own world of grandiosity and need for admiration that any fleeting regret quickly dissolves when they find new sources of validation. Furthermore, narcissists are often deeply afraid of being seen as weak or vulnerable. Showing regret for discarding someone could be perceived as a sign of weakness, so it's easier for them to quickly suppress any feelings of regret and return to their usual manipulative behavior. If you've ever been discarded by a narcissist, you may find yourself wondering whether they'll ever truly regret it. The truth is, while they may experience moments of regret, it's not likely to be genuine or long-lasting. Narcissists are not known for their capacity for deep reflection or empathy, so any regret they experience is tied to their own feelings of insecurity and loss, not an acknowledgement of how their actions have hurt others. It's important to remember that narcissists are highly skilled at self-preservation, and their emotional resilience is often tied to their ability to avoid confronting their own flaws or mistakes. Narcissists often experience regret when they discard someone, but it's a regret rooted in their own ego, rather than genuine empathy. For them, the emotional pain stems from the loss of validation, not the harm they've caused others. This type of regret is typically shallow and temporary because it centers around their own image and needs, rather than true remorse for the damage inflicted. Their regret fades quickly as they move on to find their next source of admiration, leaving little room for meaningful reflection or change. For those who have been discarded by a narcissist, the healing journey is different. It's not about waiting for the narcissist to regret their actions or transform their behavior. The process of healing is about reclaiming your own sense of worth and taking back control of your life. Narcissistic abuse often involves manipulative patterns that can erode a person's self-esteem, and the path to recovery involves breaking free from these toxic cycles. Healing requires strength and self-compassion, recognizing that your value is not determined by how others treat you, especially someone who thrives on manipulation and control. It's important to acknowledge your own emotions, validate your feelings, and set healthy boundaries going forward. The more you focus on your own growth and well-being, the more you will be able to distance yourself from the emotional turmoil that narcissists often leave in their wake. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of narcissism and regret. If this discussion resonated with you, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might find it helpful. Your support makes a difference, and it encourages us to continue diving into complex psychological topics. Until next time, remember, you are deserving of love and respect, no matter how others may treat you.